Beginning with this lecture module, we'll turn our attention to vagueness and ambiguity in relationship to concepts and categorizations. When we discuss vagueness, we'll claim that concepts have an inherent vagueness that often gets expressed as a typicality gradient. When we consider ambiguity, we'll note that the world is ambiguous with regard to our concepts, that our concepts disambiguate the world through the process of categorization, but that in doing so, they also introduce a new ambiguity. An ambiguity between the individual instances subsumed under that category that we introduce as a result of the process of categorization. We can remind ourselves that vagueness arises with regard to mental states or linguistic entities whenever the user or the consumer of those mental states or linguistic entities cannot easily and definitively determine the applicability of the mental state or linguistic entity to particular cases. As I mentioned, this appears in the psychological research literature in the form of typicality and is measured quantitatively using typicality gradients. Ambiguity, in a similar fashion, can be described as mental states and linguistic entities, so words, phrases, and sentences, exhibiting ambiguity, insofar as those mental states and linguistic entities can serve as representations for more than one state of affairs. Sometimes that's referred to, at least with words, as colexification. Or insofar as more than one mental state or linguistic entity could accurately represent some state of affairs. Let's begin by considering vagueness as an inherent but desirable feature of words and concepts. Many concepts that we use in everyday life with great facility and ease across a wide variety of circumstances exhibit this kind of inherent vagueness. We can bring out this vagueness when we start to consider how we would categorize objects as they begin to differ more and more dramatically from the typical features and functions that we associate as central to that concept or term. We might view this as a negative, but in fact I would argue that this is a desirable feature of concepts. The fact that our concepts are vague suggests that there are cases where it's difficult to decide how they apply, but the mechanisms by which they are vague seem to give them a great flexibility in applying across a wide variety of circumstances and across a wide variety of features. This flexibility is a flexibility that we don't see when we look at the classical view of concepts. The classical view of concepts, as you may know, understands possession of a concept as knowledge of a set of individually necessary and jointly sufficient conditions for membership within that category. The classical view requires that cognizers find all those features in order to categorize an object as an instance of that concept. And so, when cognizers fail to find even one feature, they will not be able to categorize that object as an instance of that category. Since there's tremendous variability in our experiences of many common categories, this looks like it can be problematic. For instance, one finds variability in how objects appear through rotation, in shading, at distance, and so on. There's also significant variability in the sorts of features that we're capable of perceiving through our senses. As a result, having a mechanism for categorization that includes this inherent vagueness probably works in our favor because it allows us to make a guess at what categories best fit any particular object based upon its similarity to the concepts and categories that we have available to us. To illustrate this point, let's go ahead and look at how we categorize using an ordinary concept, one with which we have great facility and with which we categorize with great ease and speed across a wide variety of circumstances. Let's consider the concept of chair. You probably almost instantly recognize this as an example of a chair. Its more ornate version is also easily and quickly categorized as an instance of a chair. Changing the general formal composition of it slightly still doesn't seem to slow you down. Even changing some of the functional components, moving from 4 legs to 1, doesn't alter your ability to quickly and easily categorize objects as chairs. Even changing the relative dimensions and overall general use probably didn't impair things significantly when you moved from a bar stool to a stool. So you are quick and robust in your ability to categorize using this concept, and there's no doubt about that. However, as we start to move into areas in which the function of a chair deviates from its form significantly or becomes muddied because of cross conceptual interference, as in this chair that is shaped like a woman, then things start to become a little more indeterminate. This face chair may not strike you as a chair at all, at least from this angle. This flower chair probably would not be the first thing you went towards if you were looking for a chair in a room. This bathtub chair might strike you as positively borderline at best. At a certain point, function becomes much less manifest, and it becomes difficult to identify something as a chair. I think this yarn chair here probably illustrates that point. For my dad, beanbags were the end of the line when it came to chairs. Once you got to beanbags, you crossed over the line. They no longer served the function of chairs. They were just steroid-abusing pillows. He didn't really like the idea I had one. He thought that I was being lazy by laying on a beanbag. You're just laying on the floor, he would tell me. When we get to something like this stump, you probably have drawn the line yourself already. Sure, I could use it as a chair, but it's not really a chair, you might opine. But in some contexts, that clarity of categorization may fall away a bit. You may say, oh yeah, I see, these are chairs. Other times, even the addition of context can't render something clearly and obviously a chair, even if it could potentially be used by someone as a chair. I think that we've seen that even in cases of well-trodden conceptual pathways, like a concept chair, the ability to work our way out from more prototypical and central ideas and examples farther and farther out until vagueness starts to emerge naturally and organically, and eventually deteriorates into an inability to apply the concept at all, illustrates this point admirably. We also see just how great a variety of objects, having significant differences in their material composition, their formal features, the interrelationships between those formal features, as well as a high degree of variability in their accidental perceptual properties, like color, can still be categorized by us quickly and easily under that central category of chair. This robustness of categorization across contexts and across high degrees of variability is a desirable feature, and it emerges precisely because we have this mechanism that introduces vagueness inherently into the way our concepts work and what they signify. In the last lecture module of this lecture on concepts, we'll turn our attention to ambiguity in the world and in categorization and conceptualization.